I feel inspired today to speak about the refugee crisis in Europe. And elsewhere. This is a global crisis. And when we look at it from a larger perspective, to see the forest for the trees, we see the insanity of it, total absurdity of the so-called refugee crisis. Because if you're like me and you see this planet as a global village, then what refugee crisis can there be? We're all one. This is one global village. Makes me think of John Lennon's song, Imagine. And he says, imagine no countries, no borders, no religion. In a world without borders, without corporations masquerading as countries, how can we have refugees? How can we have laws and fences and borders preventing these so-called refugees from seeking a new home? In this larger expanded vision of mine, we are all refugees. Which is for me another word for gypsy. We're all gypsies, nomads. I think it was Pythagoras said, by what divine ordinance, intervention do I find myself here in this place, in this time? If it's true that we've lived countless lifetimes, or that we are living countless lifetimes now, recognizing that there is no past, then this whole idea of refugee, being an alien, goes out the window. Which brings me to the absurd conclusion that the ultimate refugee is one that is no longer home on this planet we call Earth, Gaia, Mother Earth. Then the refugee has to seek another planet for asylum. Who has the right to refuse another person entry into their so-called country / corporation? Well, the corporation has a board of directors, also known as government, and all the bureaucracy, decision makers who make up the government, who make their own rules about citizenship, how to be a law-abiding citizen. Acceptable and non-acceptable behavior within that corporation / country. I was reminded last night of the absurdity of someone in Quebec saying to a foreigner, someone like me from Ontario originally, saying that, well, you must speak French. Dois parler français in Quebec, the official language of Quebec. If you don't speak French, then you are an outsider, you're not welcome here. My friend reminded me that French is not the original language of this province, this land we call Quebec. It used to be called Nouvelle France, New France. And I stress the word new because the French people have only been here for 600, maybe 1,000 years. The very earliest explorers came here from France. In the history books, it's more like 600 or 700 years of French occupation in this province. Before that, for thousands of years, there were native people here, and they still exist, despite the wars, the famine, the plague, annexation. My friend reminded me, well, next time somebody tells you you're not speaking the native tongue, I should ask that person, do you speak Ojibwe? Have you forgotten the language of the Mohawk, the Cree, who lived here long before the French? Good response. Very good response. And what we're saying really, in effect, is the only true language of any place is the language of the heart. Can you speak from your heart? This should or could be the only viable question to a visitor. Please, speak from your heart. Whatever language, whatever words you can put together into a sentence, please speak them from your heart. Speak your truth. This should be the only request of a visitor to a community, to a province or a country. Please, speak from your heart. Let your soul speak for you. Use whatever language, whatever body language. Perhaps you're mute. Perhaps you don't have the apparatus to speak. Then use your hands. Dance what it is you wish to say. You are welcome here. Because we know that our ancestors came here once upon a time. Perhaps they're even first generation. Perhaps we arrived from another place. Have we forgotten that we too arrived here on these shores with a different language, a different manner of expressing our truth, our intention to live peacefully in community? Have we forgotten our origins and the grace that allowed us to make a home here in this new land? that we can tell a newcomer that you're not welcome if you don't speak our language. You're not welcome if you don't have the right religious beliefs, the same code of ethics that we have written into law. Which reminds me of these so-called laws that have been erected in North America and other places around this theme of disturbing the peace. One can get arrested for disturbing the peace. What does that mean? To disturb the peace. What peace am I disturbing? Because I don't see a lot of peace. I see a lot of rules and regulations. I see people starving. I see people sick in the streets, homeless. I see people in prisons, in psychiatric wards, being forced to take toxic drugs because they have been deemed dangerous or unacceptable to the society and to the so-called peace. Perhaps they were put into the psychiatric hospital because they were disturbing the peace. And these same governments, corporations that erected these laws of disturbing the peace, aren't these often the same government/corporations that build defenses in the name of peace, that buy and or manufacture weapons of war to defend and possibly, potentially invade other countries in the name of peace, such as Afghanistan or Iraq, Libya, and Syria. So you want to tell me that I'm disturbing the peace, perhaps by staging a demonstration against war, which I prefer to call a demonstration for peace. You call this disturbing the peace. Disturbing what peace? Perhaps we should call it what it is. Piece of shit. Piece of shit. This war on terror, this colonization of oil-producing countries. Is that your piece? Piece of shit, maybe. Piece of caca. And then after waging war in these countries, you refuse the refugees, the ones whose lives have been turned upside down by these same wars, these unlawful invasions, unwelcome invasions. You turn them away when they seek asylum in your country. It's people who risk their own lives of their families, their children, to get on a boat, perhaps a boat that is not properly, seaworthy, to find a place of comfort and support, solution to their hideous situation. You tell those people that they're not welcome? Brand them as illegal aliens? An illegal alien? What the fuck? Is this not a global village? What do you mean by the word alien, first of all? What does this mean? And then to call them an illegal alien. Is there such a thing as a legal alien? Stephen Harper's government told the refugees, it's a better example of refugee, the soldiers from the Iraq War in the United States, the U.S. soldiers who consciously objected to the invasion and occupation of Iraq and decided very courageously to leave the U.S. military and take their families to Canada, a country that once gave refuge, shelter to war objectors in the Vietnam years. Many beautiful and decent American citizens came here to Canada in the 60s, early 70s, conscious objectors to the Vietnam War, and they were allowed asylum here in Canada. What happened during the Iraq invasion? The Harper government told them, you can't stay. We respect the laws of the United States of America, and you must go back and face punishment for deserting your military. You must go back with your families, with your children. And go on trial in a military court. You're not welcome here. Which is Stephen Harper's government saying that we support the invasion and occupation of Iraq. We support your government's offensive policies in the Middle East. We support their criminal punishment of soldiers who desert that campaign. You must go back and face the penalty of deserting your government's military police. To be a refugee in this time, in this day and age, is a radical thing, to say the least. It's the same thing is happening in Europe. I imagine other places as well. Immigration laws have not become better, they become tougher, more restrictions around the globe. The immigrants often come from countries that have been exploited by the same Western countries that they're trying to enter. Their home countries have been exploited, thus they feel a need to leave. Otherwise they wouldn't leave. Why would they leave their home, their families, their native soil? In many cases, it's for this very reason that the country and the resources have been exploited. The whole fabric, the infrastructure of these so-called third world countries have been corrupted and dismantled, thrown into chaos often, without opportunities for employment, or even decent housing and food. And then when these poor people look for asylum elsewhere, they are rejected, they are refused entry. It is, to quote Charles Dickens, indeed the best of times and the worst of times. Sat Nam.